Okay, this is our introduction to the nervous system, and we're going to just talk about the overall structure and function of the nervous system, and we're going to describe the divisions of the nervous system, and this will be our first of a whole series of programs on the nervous system, a really complex system. And so here we've got more chapters and more functions to deal with. So, like the other organ systems that we've talked about, there are some general functions that we need to talk about with the nervous system. So, the nervous system carries sensory information from sense organs and sensory receptor cells to somewhere in the central nervous system, either the brain, the spinal cord, or sometimes even in other structures like nerve tissue in the gut. So it carries sensory input. Also, input from several different sensory organs has to be compared. And so this is referred to as integration of sensory input. And so, like sight and sound have to be put together. Sometimes several different senses from the skin. Sometimes some things like sight and sound have to be put together. And so this is important. The nervous system also contains areas that monitor organs, monitor sensory input from organs, and are involved with homeostasis. So this sensory input is not just from the external environment, but it's also from the internal environment. And as part of homeostasis and several other things, the nervous system also activates muscles and glands. This is referred to as motor function. And so this includes skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and glands all over the body, in the skin and in the internal organs. So this is sometimes called motor. And then there are higher functions like consciousness, memory, various executive functions that are like higher thought. Those are taken care of by the nervous system. Okay, so there are lots of functions, pretty complex, a lot of sensory, lots of motor, lots of integration. Okay, the nervous system structurally is organized into a central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system includes the brain and the spinal cord. This contains large numbers of nerve cells, neurons, and some support cells. And the central nervous system is always protected by bony structures like the cranium or the vertebral canal, or it's also floating in a cerebral spinal fluid and surrounded by membranes referred to as meninges. And so there's lots of things going on with the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system originates from the central nervous system, and this contains the nerves going to and from muscles and sensory cells and glands. And this peripheral nervous system is divided itself into a sensory and a motor division. And then the motor division is divided into a somatic, which is something we have voluntary control, and autonomic, which are motor nerves that are involuntary. Okay, so central nervous system, CNS, brain and spinal cord, enclosed in bone, wrapped in membranes, floating in fluid. Peripheral nervous system, a nervous tissue outside the central nervous system, sensory receptors, nerves, things like that. The central nervous system is responsible for much more integration and storage of information, and it responds to and gets info from the peripheral nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system mostly is going to detect stimuli, send sensory information to the CNS, and receive motor info from the CNS. So we can look at this as kind of in a concept map kind of way. So there's a concept map picture. Central nervous system, brain and spinal cord, then is sending and receiving stuff from the peripheral nervous system. In the peripheral nervous system is divided into a sensory area and a motor area. The motor division contains somatic stuff, which we're voluntarily aware of. That's innervating skeletal muscles. And then autonomic, which we're not aware of. And this autonomic is innervating cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands. And that's even further subdivided into sympathetic, parasympathetic, and enteric. And we won't say that much about enteric, but there's a lot of nerve tissue controlling uh, digestive organs and digestive glands. Okay, so that's the concept map of this. We can also talk about this one way in kind of like a little example or a little anecdote. And so the nervous system helps us find and respond to changes in our external and internal environment. And so here we have a guy that sees a bear. Um, the sensory part of this system will then detect um, action potentials and transmit those to the central nervous system. So the sight, the smell, or the sound of the bear is going to be sent by the peripheral nervous system to the central nervous system. In the central nervous system, the brain or the spinal cord processes, integrates information, and initiates responses, carries out mental activities. So this is integration and higher functions, but then it's also going to activate motor activities. And so these motor activities might be somatic, which might be, okay, I'm going to turn and run. And it might be also autonomic, which is your involuntary system. So it'll increase activity in the heart muscle. It'll cause the adrenal gland to release a big dose of adrenaline, and so the person can run faster. Just a note, I used to do lots of backpacking and like to be outside. If you ever see a bear, don't run. That's the worst thing you can do. A bear can run faster than a person, much faster, probably twice as fast. And once you start running from a bear, you initiate a predator response because the bear, when it sees you running, will chase. It's just like a dog. Never run from a dog, because once you run from the dog will immediately start to chase. Okay, so that's our introduction to the nervous system and general divisions and general functions.